Hello everybody, welcome to part 2 of how to make your diorama. So since the last time we met, I've put the air in my diorama. I did that by taking all the pieces of blue paper that I had and gluing them onto the edges here and the back. I didn't put anything on the bottom yet, and I didn't bother with the top, but if you have enough blue paper, you can go ahead and put some of the top too. And I added some white clouds just by drawing the clouds with curves on my white paper and cutting them out and gluing them on top of the blue paper. Okay, so we're ready for the grass, which remember, grass is shelter for some birds, and because they make their nest out of it, and it's also food for some birds, like geese really like to eat grass. I don't know if you've ever been to Lake Merritt and seen them eating the grass, but that they like to do that. So I already cut the paper to be the right size. It's the same, like a rectangle that fits right on the bottom of my box there. And I also folded up the edge. I cut myself a little extra. See, it's a little bigger of a rectangle. And I folded up the edge because we're going to make the grass look cool there. Let me show you how. So I'm folding that little extra piece, and I'm taking my scissors and I'm cutting lots of little lines like this all the way across. So this is going to be the grass for my birds. And they can be, you can have short cuts, long cuts, you can have them close together or far apart, but about like that. And then I can take my fingers and bend some of them down if I want. Make it look as much like grass as possible. Sort of wiggle the pieces apart. So now I have some grass to stick on the bottom of my diorama, and I'm going to do that with my glue stick. If you have wet glue, like a bottle of glue, you can use that too. If you have tape, tape is really good for attaching this part. I'm using my glue stick, putting glue all the way around the bottom, not too much, just the right amount, at the edges in particular. And then I'm going to stick it on the bottom of my diorama so that now I have grass. So I have air, I have food and a little bit of shelter, the grass. Something really important that birds need to survive, that we all need to survive, is water. And remember, birds don't get their water like we do out of a glass or a drinking fountain or a water bottle. They get it out of water that's on the ground. So I made a lake. And I made my lake by taking a piece of blue paper and tearing around the edges. Like I tore it like that. But you could also use scissors and cut your lake. And you can make your lake any shape you want. The important thing is that your lake fits inside your box. And I left some room because I want to put some things in the grass around the edge of my lake. Okay, so here's the water. I'm going to put glue on it also with my glue stick. Here I am. And then we're going to stick the lake to the bottom of the diorama, just like that. So now I've got air, water. How about food? I have grass for my birds, but I remember that some birds also eat fish, right? Like cormorants eat fish, and some ducks eat little fish. Pelicans eat fish. So I found a orange piece in a magazine, and I'm going to use that orange to cut out a fish shape. First, I'll draw with my pencil kind of a fish shape on my paper. I don't know if you can see. It's probably really hard to see, but I drew here. I'll draw it on white paper so you can see about what it would look like. I drew kind of a tear shape like this, and then I put two little shapes at the end to make it look kind of like a fish. So that's what I drew on my orange paper. And then I'm cutting it out. I actually cut one out before we started here. So this is what my fish looked like when I was all done cutting it out. See, it's not perfect, but that's okay. I know it's a fish, and my birds are going to be happy to eat it. So I'm going to glue my fish into the bottom of my diorama. Taking some glue, putting it on the bottom of my fish, and now I'm going to stick it in the lake so that pelicans and ducks and cormorants all have something to eat. So let's see. I have air. I have water for my birds. I have a little bit of food, the fish and the grass. Now I need some shelter. So remember I told you grass is part of the shelter? It's because many birds use grass and twigs and leaves, other plants that they find to make their nests. So I took a little piece of cardboard. Remember that toilet paper tube I showed you? I took a little piece of cardboard and I cut out a circle and I sort of folded up the edges and I made a nest and I put some eggs in it. I think this nest is probably a goose nest because geese lay between 2 and 8 eggs. Canada geese lay between 2 and 8 eggs in their nest, and there's 3 eggs in mine. Mallard ducks lay a lot more. They lay like 12 eggs, and they actually cover their eggs up with leaves and grass before or after they're done laying their eggs, so nobody can see them. They hide them. So this one's a goose nest because you can see the eggs and there's not too many. I just used white paper to cut out the eggs and stick them in there. So now I'm going to take my nest and I'm going to put it near the water. Canada geese lay their eggs near the water. I would guess they do that so that when their babies are born, they can hop out of their nest and go right into the water. Or maybe it's so that the parents can go in the water and get some food easily while they're waiting for the eggs to hatch. So anyway, I put that nest by the water. That's where Canada geese like to lay their nest. Maybe you want to make a duck's nest with a lot more eggs in it and cover the eggs up. Or maybe you want to make a nest in a tree because a lot of birds lay nests in trees. So let's make a tree. So I got my tree ready. Again, I took that piece of that toilet paper tube that I showed you. But if you have brown paper, you could use brown paper. If you have any piece of cardboard, that'll work too. But what I did was I made a trunk, like a rectangle, right? And then I drew some branches, some pokey lines sticking out of the trunk. So that's the trunk and the branches of my tree. And then I took some green paper and I made the leaves of my tree. So now I'm going to glue the trunk and the leaves together to make my tree. Let me get my glue stick here. I'm putting the glue on the back of the branches and put my leaves on there. And when you make your tree, make it look however you want. It doesn't have to look like mine. It doesn't even have to be this type of tree. Maybe you want to make a pine tree or a tree with just a few leaves. So here's my tree. Now here's something important. I folded the bottom here because that's how I'm going to get it to stick. So I'm putting glue on that bottom part there. And I'm going to stick it on my grass in my diorama, like that. Okay. So there's my tree. So now I have air, water, food, shelter. Air, water, food, and shelter for my birds. There's just a couple extra things that I want to add to my diorama because there are things that make Lake Merritt special. So the first thing I want to add is an island. I'm bending down to get some more paper here. Lake Merritt is really special because it has islands in the middle of the lake that people aren't allowed to be on. And look, when there's water and there's an island in the middle, like I'm going to make an island out of some of the rest of my brown paper here. I'm cutting it. When there's a piece of land that only birds can get to by flying there, people aren't allowed to go there in boats. Cats that are living by Lake Merritt can't swim over there. Then that's a really safe place for birds to live and to make their nests. Nobody can get to them there and bother them. So Lake Merritt is special because there's islands in Lake Merritt. So I made an island in my lake. And I'm also going to put something that I've seen at Lake Merritt that cormorants really like to stand on when they're drying their wings, when they're drying their feathers. So I found a piece of gray paper in the magazine and I cut it into a rectangle and then I folded it in half and I folded it in half again. This is kind of tricky. So here, let me try that. Let me show you again. Here's my piece of paper. I folded it in half and then I folded that in half again. Oops. And if I unfold it and I bend the bottom two pieces into each other like that, then it ends up being a triangular prism, something we talked about in math last week. I don't know if you can see. If I hold it just right, there's a triangle on this side. You probably can't see that, can you? And my hands are a little sticky. Here we go. There's a triangle on this side and it's rectangles on that side. It's okay if it looks a little lumpy too, but I'm going to take my triangular prism, I'm putting some glue on it, and I'm going to glue this buoy in the lake so that the cormorants have a place to stand. So here we go. Let me show you so you can see. I think we have to put it down to stick it in there. There we go. So now I have air to breathe, water to drink and swim in, food, and shelter, and an extra buoy for the cormorants to stand on. So I have everything the birds need. Now the only thing that the diorama needs is some birds to live in it, right? So that's going to be part 3. We'll meet up together soon to make those birds. See you then.